What happens when British travelers cross the Atlantic expecting America's airports to be chaotic, outdated, and barely functioning, only to find trains beneath the terminals, runways stretching toward the horizon, and enough space to make Heathrow feel like it is holding its breath? During the 2026 World Cup, the first cultural shock may arrive before the first match begins. Because once they see how America welcomes millions, one uncomfortable question follows them home. Who was really falling behind? America has room. The first surprise waiting for British travelers during the 2026 World Cup may arrive before they see a stadium, order a giant soda, or hear their first enthusiastic "Welcome to America." It may happen the moment they step into an American airport terminal and realize they are no longer walking through a building that feels designed around a shortage of floor space. For years, European coverage has often presented the United States through its loudest problems: delayed flights, aging infrastructure, security lines, and chaotic holiday travel. From that picture, visitors could easily expect American airports to feel like oversized bus stations with more fast food. Then they arrive and find terminals with broad concourses, high ceilings, wide windows, multiple seating zones, and enough breathing room for 2 rolling suitcases to pass each other without beginning a small diplomatic incident. That difference becomes especially noticeable to travelers familiar with major British airports. Heathrow is one of the world's most important aviation hubs, yet it operates on a tightly constrained site surrounded by roads, neighborhoods, and existing development. Gatwick also handles enormous passenger volumes through a comparatively compact layout. At busy periods, the experience can feel like the entire population has agreed to meet beside the same departure board. People weave between luggage, shop entrances, queue barriers, and families trying to reorganize 6 passports, while standing exactly where everyone else needs to walk. Many large American airports were shaped by a different national reality: land, distance, and the assumption that people would arrive carrying half their household. Airports such as Denver, Dallas-Fort Worth, Atlanta, and Orlando were built to move huge numbers of passengers across sprawling metropolitan regions. Their scale can feel almost excessive to someone arriving from Britain. A concourse may stretch so far that the gate number starts to resemble a zip code, while an airport train appears because walking there would qualify as your daily cardio. Yet that scale serves a practical purpose. Wider corridors absorb crowds more comfortably. Larger gate areas give passengers room to sit, charge devices, eat, or simply stand without blocking an entire stream of foot traffic. Baggage claim halls are often built around the American expectation that travelers may bring large suitcases, sports equipment, strollers, and enough clothing to survive 3 different climates. During a World Cup, when supporters arrive with flags, drums, jerseys, and luggage packed with the optimism of a month-long adventure, that extra space stops looking extravagant and starts looking remarkably sensible. This is where the cultural contrast becomes more interesting than a simple argument over which airport is better. Britain learned to fit enormous demand into limited urban space. America often answered the same problem by making the building wider, adding another lane, and installing a train inside it. One approach is compact and efficient. The other says, with unmistakable confidence, we have land, so everyone can have elbows. For visitors raised on the idea that America is permanently falling apart, this is an awkwardly pleasant discovery. The country they expected to endure begins by giving them room to breathe. Before they have even left the terminal, America has already delivered one of its most characteristic luxuries: space used generously, practically, and with just enough excess to make the journey feel like an event. The airport has trains. Some British visitors arrive in America expecting an airport terminal, then discover they have accidentally entered a transportation system with airplanes attached. The first clue appears when a sign calmly tells them to board a train just to reach another gate, as though changing terminals were a respectable suburban commute. This is one of the most revealing differences between American and British airport culture. In Britain, airports such as Gatwick, Stansted, and Luton were shaped around tighter footprints, shorter internal journeys, and land that has already been claimed by towns, roads, railways, and several centuries of people building things exactly where an airport might later wish to expand. American hubs often grew in the opposite direction. They spread outward until walking alone was no longer a realistic plan, then introduced trains to keep the whole machine moving. Atlanta's plane train connects its terminals and concourses through an underground system at an airport that handled more than 100 million passengers in 2023. Dallas-Fort Worth uses Skylink to connect 5 terminals across an airport site covering roughly 17,000 acres, an area larger than Manhattan. Denver International also relies on an underground train because its concourses sit far enough apart that asking passengers to walk would feel less like customer service and more like assigning homework. To European eyes, this can seem wonderfully excessive. A railway inside an airport sounds like something invented after a committee accidentally approved every idea on the whiteboard. Yet once the World Cup crowds arrive with luggage, flags, children, jerseys, and the emotional optimism required to believe every connection will go smoothly, the logic becomes clear. These trains are not decoration. They prevent enormous hubs from turning into slow-moving parades of exhausted people dragging suitcases for half an hour. The deeper attraction is the confidence behind the design. America often builds for movement before demanding that movement begin. It assumes large crowds will come, distances will be long, and people will need a practical way through. That mindset feels very different from the familiar European habit of adapting old spaces with clever signs, narrow corridors, and the quiet expectation that everyone will simply figure it out. Britain is exceptionally good at making compact infrastructure work under pressure. Heathrow's terminals move huge international crowds through a site constrained by Greater London, while rail links such as the Elizabeth Line connect the airport efficiently with the city. However, once travelers reach sprawling American hubs, they encounter another philosophy entirely. Instead of compressing the journey, the United States accepts the distance and gives passengers a train. That is strangely addictive because it turns an inconvenience into part of the experience. The journey between gates becomes smooth, cool, and almost playful, with airport announcements replacing station conductors and aircraft tails sliding past the windows like oversized neighborhood landmarks. Even a delayed connection feels slightly less irritating when the airport has provided a miniature metro system to help rescue it. For visitors taught to expect broken American infrastructure, the contradiction is difficult to ignore. They arrive prepared for disorder and find automated trains arriving every few minutes beneath terminals the size of small towns. The country described from afar as hopelessly outdated suddenly looks remarkably comfortable with scale, technology, and the simple idea that travelers should not have to hike to Chicago before flying there. The gate glow up. A gate used to mean rows of stiff chairs, one flickering television, and a power outlet hidden behind a vending machine like buried treasure. Then America looked at the modern traveler carrying 2 phones, a laptop, wireless headphones, a boarding pass, and the emotional damage of a 3-hour delay, and quietly decided the waiting area needed a complete personality change. That shift becomes impossible to miss during the 2026 World Cup. Supporters arriving from Britain may expect the familiar airport bargain: buy a coffee, guard the table, and begin a low-level negotiation with strangers over the only visible socket. Instead, many renovated American terminals greet them with charging ports built into seats, long work counters, restaurant tables facing the runway, and gate areas designed for people who may remain there longer than they intended. LaGuardia offers one of the clearest examples. Once treated as a national punchline, the New York airport has undergone an approximately $8 billion transformation. Its rebuilt Terminal B alone covers roughly 3 million square feet, replacing the old image of dim corridors and tired waiting rooms with soaring public spaces, modern seating, natural light, and technology placed where travelers actually use it. That matters because airport modernization is easy to discuss as concrete and glass, while passengers judge it through something far more personal: whether their phone reaches boarding time with more than 6% battery. This is where the American approach becomes strangely appealing. A gate is treated less like a holding pen and more like a temporary living room shared by several hundred people who will never meet again. There are places to work, places to eat, and enough outlets that charging a device no longer requires the instincts of a bargain hunter on Black Friday. Even the seating often allows passengers to face one another, look toward the aircraft, or separate slightly from the main crowd. British airports are hardly without modern facilities. Heathrow has upgraded terminals, added charging points, and invested heavily in passenger services. Yet the difference often comes down to how easily new comforts can be added inside older, heavily constrained buildings. In London, every square foot must earn its keep. Retail, security, circulation, seating, and dining all compete within a space shaped by decades of expansion. The result can feel efficient but tightly packed, like a well-organized kitchen during Thanksgiving dinner. Newer American terminals often have the freedom to begin with the passenger's full day in mind. People will arrive early, eat, answer emails, watch a match, charge 3 devices, calm a child, and perhaps spend an unexpected afternoon waiting for weather to clear. Designing for those realities changes the emotional temperature of the journey. A delay remains annoying, but it no longer feels like a punishment served under fluorescent lighting. That comfort can become addictive because it removes dozens of tiny irritations before travelers consciously notice them. Their bags fit beside the chair, their drink has a proper table, their cable reaches the outlet. The airport has anticipated ordinary human behavior instead of treating it as an inconvenience. For visitors raised on gloomy stories about crumbling America, that polished gate creates a wonderfully awkward moment. The supposedly outdated country has remembered something remarkably modern. People do not stop being people merely because they have passed through security. 7 runways, seriously? The most revealing part of an American airport may be the section passengers barely notice from the terminal window. Beyond the glass, past the baggage carts and service trucks, lies a piece of infrastructure that quietly explains why Britain can feel so constrained by comparison. America often gives its major airports several runways and enough land to use them properly. Heathrow, one of the busiest international airports on Earth, operates with 2 main parallel runways. That fact alone tells the story of British aviation. London demands enormous capacity, but the airport sits inside a crowded region where every expansion proposal collides with homes, roads, environmental concerns, local politics, and decades of planning arguments. Heathrow moves an astonishing number of people through those 2 strips of pavement, which is impressive in the same way that serving Thanksgiving dinner from a studio apartment kitchen is impressive. The achievement is real, although nobody would call the elbow room generous. Now place that beside Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, which has 7 runways. Denver International has 6. Chicago O'Hare has 8 runways in its modern configuration. These are not decorative lines painted across empty land. They allow aircraft to arrive and depart in different directions, support several streams of traffic, and give airport operators more flexibility when weather, maintenance, or congestion begins rearranging the day. For British visitors arriving during the World Cup, the difference may first appear as a strangely calm rhythm outside the window. One aircraft is taxiing, another is landing, 2 more are waiting, and somewhere beyond them an entirely separate part of the airport is doing the same thing. The scene resembles a well-rehearsed halftime show, except every performer weighs several 100,000 pounds and nobody is allowed to miss a cue. This is where American scale becomes more than a visual spectacle. Extra runway capacity can help an airport recover when something goes wrong. A thunderstorm may still cause delays, especially in major hubs, but multiple runways give the system more options once operations resume. Britain's leading airports often have to squeeze extraordinary efficiency from limited ground, while many American hubs were designed around the belief that future demand would eventually arrive and should have somewhere to land. That idea carries a very American kind of optimism. Instead of building only for today's traffic, the country has often reserved enormous sites, added parallel runways, and accepted that a serious airport might occupy more land than an entire European town. Denver International covers roughly 33,500 acres, making it one of the largest airport sites in the world. Heathrow occupies a little over 3,000 acres. The comparison is so uneven that Denver almost appears to have purchased a county and then politely added gates. Of course, more runways do not guarantee perfect travel. American airports still face delays, staffing pressures, storms, and crowded holiday schedules, yet the physical ambition is difficult to dismiss. It reveals a nation willing to treat aviation as continental infrastructure rather than a collection of buildings squeezed between suburbs. European reporting often focuses on American disruption because disruption makes better television than a runway working exactly as intended. What visitors discover on the ground is a larger, steadier story. The United States built many of its airports with room for movement, backup, growth, and the possibility that tomorrow might be busier than today. After watching several aircraft move at once without the sky appearing to panic, returning to a 2-runway bottleneck may feel unexpectedly intimate. Britain mastered the art of doing more with less. America looked at the same challenge, found a field the size of a small kingdom, and decided that 7 runways sounded about right. The terminal has flavor. A British airport often introduces itself through instructions. Liquids in the tray, passport ready, gate closes in 20 minutes. An American airport may do all of that while a country singer performs near the food court and somebody nearby is eating barbecue before breakfast. That difference sounds decorative until travelers realize how powerfully it changes the first emotional impression of a country. Many European airports are designed around international neutrality. Heathrow, Charles de Gaulle, and Frankfurt serve passengers from nearly everywhere, so their commercial spaces naturally lean toward familiar global brands. Luxury retail, duty-free perfume, and food that can be recognized without opening a translation app. This approach makes sense, although it can leave terminals feeling like polished international shopping centers that happen to have airplanes parked outside. American airports increasingly behave like unofficial visitor centers with security checkpoints. Nashville International Airport fills its terminals with live performances because music is part of the city's identity rather than something saved for the moment tourists reach Broadway. Austin Bergstrom follows a similar idea, using local music and Texas food to make the airport feel connected to Austin before anyone has collected a rental car. Portland International Airport has long emphasized local businesses, while its rebuilt main terminal features a timber roof covering roughly 9 acres, giving passengers an architectural welcome rooted in the Pacific Northwest instead of another anonymous ceiling. That local personality becomes especially powerful during the World Cup, when visitors may arrive carrying a media-made picture of America assembled from crime headlines, political arguments, and airport delay footage. They expect stress, then hear live music. They expect bland terminal food, then meet regional barbecue, Cajun cooking, New York pizza, or seafood associated with the city outside. The country begins correcting its reputation through lunch, which may be the least confrontational form of diplomacy ever invented. Britain has wonderful regional character, yet its busiest airports cannot always express it as freely. A connection through Heathrow may tell passengers a great deal about international luxury, and very little about everyday London. Gatwick can move travelers efficiently toward dozens of countries, but its atmosphere is shaped mainly by the practical demands of handling huge crowds inside limited space. The local city often waits beyond the terminal doors. In America, the airport sometimes refuses to wait. It brings the city inside. This creates an experience people can become oddly attached to because every arrival feels different. Landing in Nashville does not feel identical to landing in Portland, New Orleans, or Austin. Even when the chairs, boarding scanners, and security announcements follow the same basic routine, the food, materials, music, and sense of place change around them. The terminal develops a personality almost like the city sent its friendliest cousin to greet everyone at baggage claim. There's also something deeply American in the decision to turn necessary waiting into entertainment. A delay remains inconvenient, but it becomes easier to tolerate when a local band is playing nearby, or when dinner tastes like the destination rather than an emergency meal wrapped in plastic. The airport does not merely process travelers, it tries to win them over while they are still deciding how they feel about the country. That may explain why some British visitors begin missing America before their return flight has even departed. The terminal gives them one final taste of a nation that is bigger, warmer, more playful, and far more locally proud than the gloomy version they had been shown from across the Atlantic. By the time boarding begins, the airport has stopped feeling like an exit. It feels like America making one last charming argument for staying. Dogs get bathrooms. There is a moment inside many American airports when British visitors stop reading the signs, look again, and quietly wonder whether jet lag has begun early. The symbol shows a dog. The arrow points toward a restroom-style room. Nobody has misunderstood anything because the airport has genuinely built a bathroom for animals. That tiny detail reveals something much larger about American public life. The United States has a habit of turning unusual needs into visible infrastructure, then labeling everything so clearly that nobody has to whisper for help. At major airports, service animal relief areas may include artificial grass, drainage systems, waste bags, sinks, and enough room for a traveler to enter with a large dog and luggage. Some even have miniature fire hydrants, because apparently the designers understood that dignity sometimes requires proper set decoration. This is not simply an eccentric luxury invented by an airport manager who loves golden retrievers. United States transportation rules require airports serving more than 10,000 departing passengers annually to provide service animal relief areas in each terminal. That requirement matters during events such as the 2026 World Cup, when airports receive travelers with disabilities, assistance dogs, emotional support needs permitted under applicable rules, and pets traveling across long distances. A flight from London to Los Angeles can last roughly 11 hours, which is already demanding for a person who can order ginger ale and complain politely. A dog has fewer options. British airports do provide assistance services, and several major hubs have introduced animal relief facilities. Heathrow, for example, handles service animals under established travel procedures. Yet dedicated indoor relief rooms are still less familiar as a standard feature across Britain's airport landscape. Limited terminal space plays a role, while different travel habits matter as well. Britain is compact, rail travel is deeply embedded, and many domestic journeys never require putting a Labrador through a connection in Texas. America faces a different reality. The country's enormous, domestic flights can last 5 or 6 hours, and people frequently relocate, vacation, work, or visit relatives across distances comparable to crossing Europe. Pets are woven into those journeys. Instead of acting surprised every time an animal appears, the airport prepares for it. That preparedness has a strangely lovable quality because it shows how American convenience often works. Someone noticed a real problem, refused to pretend it was too awkward to discuss, and built a practical little room beside the human restrooms. The solution is direct, slightly oversized, carefully signed, and just quirky enough to become a story travelers tell after returning home. It also challenges the version of America often exported through European headlines. A country presented as careless about public services can appear remarkably thoughtful when an airport is planned for the needs of a traveler who cannot simply leave a service dog outside. Compassion here does not arrive as a speech. It arrives as washable flooring, running water, and a patch of indoor grass behind a clearly marked door. That may be why the feature stays in people's memories. Grand terminals impress the eyes, but considerate details win affection. They suggest that American scale is not reserved only for airplanes, highways, and giant drinks. Sometimes it creates room for whoever might otherwise be forgotten. Once visitors discover that even the dog has a designated comfort stop, the American airport begins to feel less like a machine processing passengers and more like a place that studied the whole strange family arriving with them. The adults get coffee, the children get play areas, the phones get charging ports, and the Labrador gets a private patch of grass. Honestly, everybody appears to have been considered. Waiting is free. One of the most American airport inventions does not fly, scan passports, or carry luggage. It is simply a parking lot where people wait for a text message, usually while finishing cold coffee and watching the arrivals board like it owes them money. The cell phone lot sounds almost comically ordinary, yet it reveals a major difference in how airports treat the person coming to collect a traveler. Across the United States, many large airports provide free waiting areas outside the busiest terminal roads. Drivers remain there until the passenger has collected a bag, found the correct door, and sent the sacred message every American family recognizes: I'm outside. Only then does the car approach the terminal. The idea solves a surprisingly human problem. Flights land early, bags arrive late, phones lose signal, and relatives confidently wait at door 4 while the passenger is standing beneath a giant door 14 sign. Without a designated waiting area, cars circle endlessly or crowd the curb, creating the automotive equivalent of musical chairs, except every chair weighs 2 tons and somebody's uncle is becoming impatient. Several American hubs have turned this practical solution into a proper facility. Denver International's waiting area, called Final Approach, includes flight information displays and nearby food options. Other airports provide large free lots where drivers can monitor arrivals without paying terminal parking rates or joining the traffic stream before the passenger is ready. The system is simple because it respects a fact airport planning often forgets. Every arriving traveler usually creates another journey on the ground. That feels especially refreshing beside the experience at a number of British airports, where terminal drop-off and pickup areas have increasingly become managed, time-sensitive spaces. Heathrow introduced a terminal drop-off charge in 2021, reflecting the intense pressure on road access around an airport surrounded by Greater London. Gatwick, Stansted, and several other British airports have also used charges or tightly controlled zones to reduce congestion and encourage public transportation. The policy has a logical purpose, although it can make collecting someone feel like a game show where the prize disappears every additional minute. America approaches the same family ritual with more land and a different instinct. Instead of asking a driver to predict the exact second a suitcase will appear, many airports provide somewhere free to pause. That small courtesy carries emotional weight during the World Cup, when international visitors arrive, tired, overloaded, and surrounded by unfamiliar signs. Knowing that a friend or relative can wait nearby without feeding a parking meter every few minutes makes the arrival feel calmer before the reunion even happens. The appeal reaches deeper than convenience. American culture places enormous value on being met personally. Somebody drives to the airport, brings the larger vehicle, helps with the bags, and begins the welcome before the highway has even appeared. The cell phone lot supports that ritual without making it unnecessarily expensive or stressful. European media may portray American car culture as nothing more than traffic, asphalt, and oversized vehicles. Yet here, the road system is doing something unexpectedly warm. It gives people room to wait for one another. That may be why such an unglamorous parking lot becomes strangely memorable. It represents a country saying that arrivals matter, reunions deserve time, and nobody should have to circle Terminal B 12 times because grandma is still searching for her suitcase. Perhaps the greatest airport surprise is not how much America builds, but how carefully it makes room for people, families, animals, luggage, and even the long wait before a reunion. British airports show remarkable efficiency under pressure, while American airports reveal another strength: the confidence to plan bigger, think ahead, and make travel feel more human. Which American airport has impressed you most, and what should Britain borrow from it? Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more unexpected stories about everyday America.